LD Comics is a women-led welcoming to all forum run by creators. We champion the graphic novel form, particularly works with an autobiographical voice. Our activity is towards supporting and equipping graphic novelists, especially but not exclusively people identifying as women. Established in 2009 by Sarah Lightman and Nicola Streeton as Ladies Do Comics, today LD Comics is run by a committee of published graphic novelists: Rachel Ball, Emma Burley, Lou Crosby, Wallace Eates and Nicola Streeton. From the start, the core of LDC's activity has been the monthly meetings, hosting presentations from invited guests to a public audience in a welcoming atmosphere for networking and making friends. The introduction of LDC Online Monthlies aims to replicate the joy and stimulation of our physical meetups. Everyone is welcome.
First of all, huge thanks to the LDC Forum and most especially to Lana Lê for all the work and the bravery she has put into organizing the online fair. I'm not very good at extemporaneous speaking, so I hope it's okay that I prepared some notes. When I was growing up, there were always mainstream American comics around the house from my older cousins and sister, Superman, Batman, Archie, and Veronica. My favorite was Little Lulu. As youngest, with no other kids my age, I spent most of the time entertaining myself, as Mom put it. My favorite entertainment was drawing what I called comics and making up stories as I drew. It felt like being in some sort of magical time-space machine where I could go anywhere I wanted. And that has not changed, even now. It is still my biggest reason for making comics. For a long time after uni, I stopped drawing and just did a lot of writing. Published a collection of short stories and some memoir pieces, taught creative writing in a college. During the lockdown, our family was fortunate to have a place where we could follow the stay-at-home order. But I also became aware that there was a presumption of privilege in so many of the government-issued orders to keep us safe. The new normal of the pandemic and lockdown also posed questions that seemed to me like riddles that had to be answered in order to get from a place where you did not want to be to some place you did. For me, two of the biggest questions were, first, how one might connect to or build a community that reached outside of our isolation. And second, how it might be possible to open up the restricted space imposed by the lockdown and by all the fear that came with the pandemic and make it into a bigger space. I remembered how it felt when I was drawing stories as a child, and I took up making comics again. The internet, that nefarious tool of the oligarchs, led me to people and places that helped. It led me to a course at the SVA, where I met one of my fabulous mentors, the Japanese artist Rumi Hara. And it led me to the women-led comics community at LDC. I was inspired by the guest speakers at the monthly forums, but mostly by the example of the creators in LDC who had drawn and written their own paths through the comics wilderness and were helping others to do the same. It was also through LDC that I took a Draw to Explore class with Wallace Eates, who I immediately knew was an artist and teacher and person I wanted to learn from. With all this help, and more recently, with the great feedback from Rachel Ball's peer mentoring group, Grow Your Graphic Novel, I began drawing a cycle of short stories about the pandemic. My submission to the LDComics Fair is the first story from this project. Thank you so much for all you've done.
I'm really, really excited to be here. So thank you so much, Lana, and everybody for selecting my work for the online fair, I'm really, it's really quite a big thing for me because I haven't had that much involvement with any communities really around comics apart from the one in Dublin, which is the DCAF Comics Festival. But I started making comics actually like Sibil, and thanks so much, Sibil, for sharing your work. It was absolutely beautiful. When I was a kid, I started making comics and always loved it and was really interested in comics because my dad had like an amazing comic collection. So I used to read it all the time and do my own little comics. And then I ended up going to art college a long time ago, and I studied painting. So painting was like a great, amazing experience for me, and to learn how to do that was fantastic. And it led me to becoming a curator and an arts manager. So I didn't end up being a painter. What happened? Yeah, sorry, this is distracting me now. Thank you. Yay. Are we there?
Yes.
Okay,
sorry, guys.
So I ended up becoming a curator. I still work freelance as a kind of a producer in the visual arts. So I work a lot with artists all the time. I'm always lucky enough to go into artists, to do artist studio visits and meet artists and learn about their practices. And I kind of more and more over the years started to just get a little bit jealous of them. So in 2018, I decided to quit my job, which was a big decision at the time, and go freelance. And I moved here to beautiful Portugal, where I am right now, to do a master's in drawing in the University of Lisbon, because I felt like I'd been away from drawing for so long. I knew I wanted to make comics, but I felt that my drawing skills were not up to scratch, and I needed to really practice. So I spent a wonderful, dreamy 2 years in Lisbon doing that master's full time. And then nowadays I'm kind of back and forth between Sintra and Dublin. And if you just go back one slide, would that be okay? Because I want to show you so that's kind of like who I am. I started self-publishing comics about 5 or 6 years ago, and my master's project was about my grandmother Eileen. You can go onto my website and see a few things that I've done. But when I got accepted for this, I had the idea to make a comic about our neighbour here in the countryside of Portugal, who is a man called Faghihi. I've changed his name, but the inspiration for this comic is really him, and that's him in his garden. If you go to the next slide, please. So I started, the idea came, I've had an idea for ages to do something about him because he's such a great character. But about last autumn, this incident happened that my partner Pedro told me about with Faghihi. Faghihi comes to us every single day, brings us eggs. He's the kindest man you could ever meet. And he is kind of like our grandfather, I would say. He's become like family. But this incident happened with a falcon. A falcão is the Portuguese word for falcon, but it's also a surname. So I decided to kind of change Faghihi's character a little bit and call him Falcão in this comic book. And these are just some early sketches of kind of how I was seeing his character develop. And that's a page that was kind of like a development page there on the right, which didn't, it was inspiration, let's say. So you can go to the next slide. So I started with the cover, which is kind of a bit weird. Oh, it's gone really small. Now it's gone really big.
Sorry, Ray.
Okay. You get to look at the details of my amazing drawings. So that's nice. Anyway, I started with the cover mainly because I think it was one of the first things that was requested on the online fair was that you had to have the cover done. And because my day job is very busy and I have not very much time to draw these days, unfortunately, I decided I would start with the cover. I knew what the story would be because it is based on kind of real life. It is based on a true story. And so the cover came first. I did it on that brown paper. If you could go back one slide, I don't know if you can, just while I'm talking about the cover. And another one. Yeah, so I did it on that brown paper. I use a lot of like analog techniques. I think comes from painting. I really enjoy exploring different materials. I use a lot of, like for every project I do, I tend to kind of change the materials. But for this one, I used water-soluble pencil on paper, and that cover is done on brown paper. The other pages are done on white paper, and then I kind of cheated in the brown paper on Procreate. But there's very little kind of there's a bit of Procreate used, but mostly it's analog. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you. Yeah, so the picture on the right is the original drawing. It's an A4 size with water-soluble pencil. And then I kind of played with the levels and added in that brown paper texture, and then the text, which I did by hand. And it was my first time doing text by hand. So the lettering is not amazing, but I tried. So you can go to the next slide. So the story is about Falcão, who lives alone in this stone house in the countryside with just his hens and a few stray cats for company. And it's a story about what happens when, I suppose, that piece is kind of disturbed. There's a bit of a nemesis going on, and there is a moral quandary. And I wanted to make this piece because it challenged, like the story challenged me to have empathy for all types of people and situations, and to not see things just in a straightforward kind of cancel culture-y kind of a way, but to try to see the truth or the empathy behind different people's stories, and people that come from all sorts of different backgrounds, like Falcão. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of challenges and what I've learned. So the timing and the deadline was a bit of a challenge because, as I said, I have little time at the moment, but I definitely challenged myself to do something really analog and on paper. And like what you see here is all done with watercolor pencils. The only Procreate is really the lettering that's been put in on top, and the texture, the paper texture, the brown paper. So like I've always thought, I don't know what it is, I have a thing about just doing things in analog and not using computer. So that was my challenge, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And it was really great to have the opportunity to do something and to challenge myself to kind of get it done in a short period of time. So just thanks so much again to everybody at LDC, and to all of you for listening. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else's work.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beatrijs Brouwer, or also known as B or Bea or Beastly Worlds, and I'm really excited to be here and to be part of the LDC Online Comics Fair. So yes, a big thank you to the LDC team. This is a portrait of myself with my stress beast, which accompanies me to many places. I'm an illustrator and small press creator based in Bristol in the UK, from the Netherlands. And this is the cover of my comic. So it's called Shimmer Paths, and it was sparked by a conversation that I was having with my partner that was about superstitions around cats. So some people get a bit freaked out when cats sort of stare fixedly at one spot, or they sort of seem to be tracking something with their eyes, but there's nothing there. So some people think that cats can maybe see ghosts. And this kind of combined with this, saying or belief that cats have 9 lives in my mind, it sort of became this image of this little cat that could see something that its humans couldn't, and it's this weird creature from another world. And then I just wondered, what if cats did have 9 lives, but they kind of all played out at once across 9 different worlds that they can wriggle their way in and out of? So that's that sort of sparked the story. And if you could possibly go back to that second slide.
I'm trying.
No worries. It's all good. Well, in a sec, when we get back to that.
It went ahead without my...
Oh no, runaway slides. No worries at all.
I can't seem to get back to it.
Don't worry. I can keep going, and we'll see the images as they come. So the main characters are a little black cat called Kibling and a big, older, floofy gray and white cat called Croquette. And the story is about their journey, and it's about finding yourself lost in a huge new place and having to deal with change. And it's about learning not to rush to judgment, and a little bit about life and death as well. Oh yeah, so here you can see the 2 main characters. And so in the story, Kibling accidentally tumbles into a different world. And luckily he meets Coquette, who is able to guide him on how to use the shimmer paths that cats have access to wriggle their way in and out of these different worlds. And eventually there's a next slide with some sketches of many cats. And that is, many of my projects just start off with loads and loads of sketches. So that was one of the pages that I filled with just studies of cats. And it's just my way of getting to sort of explore characters. And another thing that I did a ton of sketches of were ideas for different worlds. Once I had lots of different options, I narrowed it down to 9. And that just really helped me in terms of getting to know the characters more, because it was really thinking about how would they react to these different environments that they found themselves in, and the different creatures and things that they'd encounter there. And it also really helped, of course, to set the story structure, because the way in which the action kind of flowed depended on these different places. So once I had the worlds and the sort of way in which they moved through them, I just made loads of different notes about sort of tiny thumbnail sketches, tiny snippets of dialogue. And then I did something that for me was a bit different, which was, rather than leap into sort of starting drafting, I then redid the thumbnails in a slightly bigger format on separate pieces of paper. So they're still really rough, and you can actually see here, you can see this is half of a page where Kibling has just fallen into a different world, and he's not very happy about it. And so in the top right, in the top left corner, sorry, you can see it's really quick, really rough, but already like formed a really good blueprint for the one below it, which was the sort of final pencil one, which I then inked over in waterproof ink, because I also really love working in traditional media. And then I colored it with watercolor. And then there's a hidden 5th stage, which is the digital editing. So that is after, inevitably with the scanning, no matter how much I clean it, there's always some dust. So it's just getting rid of things like that. It's just tidying up some places where the watercolor overran, especially with speech bubbles and with expressions. I just want to make sure that they're really clear. So the final slide is that table that you saw with lots of different papers. That's the one. So that's just a little bit of insight into the state of our table these past few months. And sometimes I end up sort of almost doing a little production line in terms of if there's a character with a jumper that's the same color over several pages, I'll just do all of those in one go rather than just finish one page. And then other times I'll get really into one page and just be super focused on that. But in terms of challenges and reflections, I think that it was really great to learn that I could work to a deadline with comics. So thank you for that. My previous comic took several years, so this felt really fast for me. And I'm a huge overthinker and perfectionist, so it was actually really useful to have this set limited time to sort of spur my creative decision making on. And where, like, I think looking back, sometimes I might have made different design choices, but I'm just really happy that I stuck to this mantra that I try and stick to of done is better than perfect. And I feel like it's a completed little story, but it also, I think, gives scope for further exploration, which is exciting. And I guess my final reflection also is on that new way of working that I mentioned earlier with the separate pieces of paper, the kind of stage in between my scrolly notes and between drafting, the sort of proper pencil layer, as it were. So I just found that really helpful, and I'll definitely be taking that forward into next projects, because having all these separate pieces of paper that I could just completely plaster my floor with gave me a much better overview in terms of how the story flowed, what the pacing was like, where the action could be teased out a little bit more to make more sense, or where a bit more space was needed to kind of build a bit more atmosphere for quiet moments, or where I could, you know, have more impact for a double page spread, or just switch things in to sort of try different things. So I found that really helpful. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It feels very odd to be talking at an event, but thank you for having me. I'm Taran. I go by Taran Draws online. For the fair, my comic is Undiagnosed, my adult ADHD diagnosis story. So I've recently, as in very recently, finished university, as in like last week. But I didn't know until I was nearly 18 that I had ADHD, which was quite an interesting time, as my comic kind of talks about. My inspiration for doing the project was I love graphic medicine and autobiographical comics. Like, I've read quite a lot, but particularly there's a project that came out a few years ago called Spectrum. Oh no, it was called Sensory Life on the Spectrum. And it was a big anthology of autism-related comics. But I think there probably is some, but I haven't seen a huge amount of ones to do with ADHD. So I wanted to do my own. And I think it's very poignant currently to be talking about late diagnosis, because a lot more people are experiencing it later into life because of how underdiagnosed it is. I worked in Procreate, so I used digital for my drawing mainly as a time-saving, a time-saving thing. I think with autobiographical, some of the biggest challenges to putting it together are picking what to include, because you could easily write hundreds of pages of random anecdotes, but trying to distill it down into cohesive narrative, for mine being 16 square pages, was quite a process. There's definitely some things that I could have included that I had to cut, but it was quite interesting and enjoyable to look back and pick up on all of these things from when I was a kid to now. I think I asked my mum about a million questions throughout the process of how old was I when I did that random thing. Yeah. I'm not sure what else to say, actually. I spoke too quickly, as I have a tendency to do.
You could read us a bit of it. That's always nice. Read us a page or two.
Yeah, I could read the first page. So I have ADHD, but I didn't find out until I was 18. It has always been present, but the way it affects me has changed as I've grown up. As I got older, with more responsibilities and less support, I felt the weight of it dragging me down, with no explanation as to why. Ever since I was little, I've always been intensely curious. I was interested in everything and would bounce between things as quickly as I could get there. I created a ramp of soft toys to escape my crib, learned to walk and run at 10 months, and managed to climb the ladder of the bunk bed I shared with my sister at 15 months, much to my parents' dismay. I wasn't just physically hyperactive, but mentally too. I talked rapid fire and wanted to know what everything was and how it worked, even if my questions were beyond my parents' capacities to answer. So that's the first few pages. But yes, I really enjoyed making it, and it was lovely to be invited to be part of this tonight and to be part of the fair, especially with so many amazing other creators.
Yeah, so my name is Chie. It's pretty much what I'm gonna say is written down there. So I thought maybe people can read it whilst I talk a bit. But yeah, so there's the my cover of my comic, which is Tia and Guthrie. So just a background, I was born in Japan in 1984, and I'm based in Nottingham since it was 2004, so it's been a long time here. I did a fine art BA, then an MA in children's book illustration, 10 years apart, and then since then I've been I haven't really made comics at all, really. I'm a screen print. I like screen printing, and I sell prints and risograph prints and stuff like that. There's a QR code there for my shop if you're interested. I teach part-time or hourly paid lecturer at the university in Nottingham, graphic design and illustration. So my comic is kind of based on, so it's sort of based on many things, but like my personal experience as well as other people's. It's an early university love story. So it makes me feel really cringe saying this because I've made a rom-com, and just saying that makes me feel really embarrassed. But anyway, it's about like first love, but also about friendship. So yeah, you can go to the next. Thank you. So the reason why I did that is because in 2023 November I got a DYCP, which is a Arts Council grant called Developing Your Creative Practice Award, and I thought, like, I've been doing singular images for a long time, illustrations and prints. I had a story to tell, and I wanted to develop a graphic novel, my first one. So I started with that grant I had. So what did I write? So I went to Thought Bubble for the first time in 23, and I went to the Cartoon Museum annual conference. I did the Grange residency, the Nicola, the LDC, and also I had mentoring with Emily Howarth Booth, who was a winner of the Comica Observer Guardian Graphic Novel Award, Short Stories Award in 2014, I believe. But anyway, so I developed the first chapter, which is of my first graphic novel called Gas. That's one of the early pages on the left-hand side. If you ever want to if you're interested in reading my DYCP form that was successful, please email me, because I'll just send it to you and then you can have a look if you don't know about it. But it was really good because I got £12,000, which meant like I could really focus my time in making something. And Tia and Guthrie, so my inspiration, I really love Chris Ware's work. You can see on the right-hand side, I love the way so I'm interested in observational moments, and he does that really perfectly within these panels, like moment to moment transition. And or aspect to aspect in some areas. But anyway, so I'm interested in comics that really expands and time as well as really shrinks time. And so another reference here I've put down is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a film in 2004, and which I really like because it's about relationships, but not in a way that it's, like all lovey-dovey, pink and beautiful, but it's kind of the sorts of like the horrors of the everyday, I guess, of the relationship when you're with someone. Also, another thing on the bottom right is Tim and Dawn in the Office series, which I loved, the British one, 2001. I really love comedy, but that their relationship is, for me, is kind of a real inspiration. That kind of the Office. My favorite scene is the photocopier just running and things like that. Some a media that observes the everyday, the banal, and kind of pinpoints the kind of the banality of it. I just love that. Anyway, next slide, please. Sorry, I rambled. So medium and process, there's 2 slides. This is the first one. I just put my little first noting down of my comic, Tion Guthrie, on a cutting mat so that you can see how small it is. It's actually 15 centimeters by 10, I think. Anyway, so I like to work really small, and I did all these. Some people can write down stories and dialogue all by text and then get on with the artwork. I can't. I found that I can't do that. By making this comic, I realized that I'm not that kind of comic maker. I have to know the character to know what they're saying. So anyway, I made these tiny comics. Then I cut them, I photocopied them, chopped them up, and then try to organize the composition. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. So
Here we go.
there we go. So then I used that chopped up one where I thought about the panels, the spacing, the pacing and composition, then created like a neat draft, then another neater draft using a light box. Then this time, like I really like it that everyone's saying like using analog, because I've always liked analog, but I thought this online fair, my first time ever where people are gonna see me as a comic maker, I thought, let's do something real cool. I did it digitally. Well, so I scanned my hand-drawn stuff, then I did use Procreate. I feel like a real youth. But anyway, I did Procreate and scanned it. I mean, drew over it and limited the color palette so that there's like kind of overall consistency. And the brush range, there's 2 brushes I only used, because also in a way I'm not a pro with Procreate at all, so I thought I had to limit it. Next slide, please. Sorry, I ran. Okay, so the challenges I found and what I learned was the structure, like how do I even get started? So I put another image there by someone else, which is called Nick Donasso. I don't know how you pronounce his surnames, but anyway, Nick Donasso, I love his works. In one of the books, graphic novel, Sabrina, that you can see there. Anyway, in one of his interviews, he said something like, the page design and the grid I use just provides a framework. I need to keep working every day, which I found that really inspirational. So what I did was I just thought, okay, I'm doing 3x4 grid and then work around it. And then that really helped me working my head around, because it really doesn't come naturally to me making comics. I do love it. Anyway, second one, dealing with like negative thoughts and voices, it's just all like so much, it's ridiculous. But you just have to get on with it. And the third one is distraction. I get so distracted. Perhaps I need to be diagnosed with something. But anyway, I like feeding birds, and feeding birds or drinking coffee or thinking about having coffee and biscuit, all kind of things you're going to eat with. So things like that. What I learned was from the Thought Bubble panel talk, the panel talk that I participated at Thought Bubble in 2023. One guy, a comic maker, he said, just finish stuff as an advice to any aspiring comic maker. And I thought, like, that's a brilliant thing. So I've written it down and then stuck it on the front of my desk now, because that's what keeps me going. So to combat things like this point 2 and point 3. Anyway, thank you so much for having me, and thank you. And I hope that you get to see my comic.
So you can all admire my Canva skills, which I went really kind of crazy with, because this comic is very, very extra, I would say, especially for the kind of stuff that I do. But yes, my name is Kamila, and I work under the name Pigeon. I do illustration and comics. I published a graphic novel titled Rusałka, Whispers of the Forest with Strange Publishing. And I work a lot with folklore and kind of like surreal, whimsical stories. And the comic that I'm releasing for the online fair is called The Ecstasy of Jenny D. You can see the cover on this slide. As you can see, there's a lot going on there. It's sort of the first time that I'm tackling a bit of a historical drama genre, but I'm also mixing up a lot of different references. And if we can go to the next slides, I can tell you a little bit more about it. So as I said, it's kind of like historical drama genre, but because I'm mashing up so many different like nerdy interests and references in this comic, I find it a bit difficult to actually define the genre, but that's okay. It's like a little original comic that I'm really passionate about, so it can be a weird thing, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So I try to like pinpoint main sort of vibes and themes that I have put in this story. And I've been describing it to people as Bridgerton meets the Dancing Plague, and I just found it the most accurate. Hopefully you'll see why in a minute. But I also focus on things like repressed queerness, a little bit of religious trauma, horrors of girlhood and sisterhood, because the story, the main protagonists are two sisters. For the cover itself, the sort of ecstatic head shot that you can see, it's actually referencing this sculpture, The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. And the whole idea came to me after listening to this long podcast episode about sort of cases of mass hysteria in history and things like the Dancing Plague. And it just really sort of moved my imagination. And I was thinking about these things like religious ecstasy and why would people sort of fall in this kind of episodes and this kind of behavior, and it just kind of started like snowballing into a story. So I was looking into things like sort of medieval manuscripts, and the cover itself, it's supposed to look like almost like a teenager's diary, with different stickers and kind of like it's a little bit camp, it's a little bit silly, because the protagonists are young women, young girls. And yeah, we can go to the next slides. I can tell you a little bit about the characters. Yes, okay, so there's quite a few weird characters in this story. So from the left, we have sisters Jenna and Paloma Duval. And they don't really get on. Jenny is the god's favorite and everybody's favorite, and Paloma isn't, but she really, really would like to. And that's kind of the base conflict in their relationship, as you will see. We have the grandmother, who is a very, very sassy older lady and is really, really trying to sort of rebuild the family's situation. We have a bard called Yovi, who is my beloved fruity boy. And they are like the core characters of this story. But there is some more, so we can go to the next slide. And their life becomes a little bit more complicated when the girls pray, let's say, a little bit too much, with a little bit too much intention, and these surreal, mysterious archangel decided to, I guess, introduce some divine intervention. And everything's set in a town as well, with the backdrop of this very mysterious monastery. We also have this priest called Father Tadeusz, who's like a sort of pillar of the community. So it's very much the case of religious, traditional society versus some weird, surreal shenanigans. And so already, as you can see, there's sort of a lot going on there. And I have a tendency of trying to cram loads of different things into a story. So hopefully, if you're a maximalist like me, you will enjoy it. And we can go to the next slide now. So in terms of inspiration, in terms of my process in general, I'm working on this comic fully digitally on Procreate. So the process itself maybe isn't sort of as interesting. It's pretty straightforward, just a very stylized, organic to me drawings, but I have gone really, really into the visual research. So I've just saved loads of inspiration for different elements and ornaments that I'm putting in the comic. As you can see here, one main inspiration was looking at Christian and medieval art, some Christian images and symbols, things like, from the left, we've got obviously different depictions of angels. I especially love the sort of like really wonky, weird ones with little scrunched faces. I think they're just lovely. We've got some biblically accurate angels and how they might be depicted in like a sort of disturbing way. I was looking at sort of dance macabre as well, and the symbolics of that, and the very sort of ornate depictions of Virgin Mary, and yeah, and all sort of like medieval manuscripts. There's so many more images on my Pinterest board, but these are like the main ones that you will sort of find reflected in the comic. And can we have the next slide? Yeah, and this is sort of the other big part of the research and visual inspiration, which is just looking at historical costumes and kind of looking at which costumes I can select and which elements I can select to highlight the personalities of my characters. It's something that I really enjoy. So if you're expecting or enjoy historical accuracy, don't read this comic. That is not what it is. I say that it's like Bridgerton satire just because it has like a very vague sort of 1830s setting, but I very much mixed up like different types of clothing. So here are a couple of examples. The sort of early 19th century big fluffy sleeves and bonnets. That's what Jenny is wearing because she's very girly and very extra, and I think that just really highlights her personality. But then the grandmother, Lucretia, she's wearing kind of more like Edwardian style widow dresses, and always like just black and white or black and cream, and very much screams authority. But then on the other hand as well, Yovi as a bard who's just incredibly whimsical. He just defies all the norms of fashion. So I've been looking at a lot of sort of contemporary fashion that references like sort of medieval or like Renaissance elements. So I had a lot of fun with character design and costumes. And what I've been really, really trying to do with this comic is to push myself to do drawings that are very stylized and sort of facial expressions and poses that will really translate emotions and humor, because that's something I really wanted to work on. So I guess in terms of challenges, that was like my main goal for this comic. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yep, so couple of pages. So I picked these two pages to show you because I feel like the one on the left is very much showing that Bridgerton-esque setting. And it's a scene where, from very like early in the comic, where the grandmother is showing off the girls at a social, at the ball, when they are meeting their prospective husbands. And it's incredibly awkward. And yeah, that you will sort of see how it ends. So the scenes like that happen, especially early on in the comic, and they were very fun to write. And then the page on the right is that element of divine intervention, religious ecstasy. There's a lot going on. Angels and devils descend. Also very fun to draw. But these are very much like two different vibes that clash in this comic. And yeah, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Can we have the next slide? Oh yeah, so sorry, I thought there was one more, but there we go. So in terms of like the timeline and what I'm planning with it is obviously launching it in July, which will be the black and white digital version, especially for the LDC Online Fair. And I'm really hoping as well to do a crowdfunding campaign for the fully full color sort of print version, hopefully in time for Thought Bubble, but we will see, because it's a bit of a tight schedule. But yeah, but that is the plan, and I think there's just one slide left. Again, yeah. So I also wanted to say that I've been sharing some more previews in my newsletter, and things like preview pages and a bit more process. So if you're interested and you would like to see more, you can just join like through my website. Yeah, and today here I have the panel with some trial colors that I did, like sort of very pastel, with Paloma having a little like sort of panic confusion moment. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy it. And that was a little preview. And thank you so much.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here, and thank to LDC for this opportunity to share our story and to connect with so many talented and amazing people. I'm Mahour, I'm the illustrator of this story, and this is Sadaf, she's the writer. I'm going to be presenting our work for this, I'm going to be presenting our work, and I'll start with just introducing ourselves. Sadaf is an Iranian comic writer. She has a habit of collecting academic degrees. She has a bachelor in anesthesiology, a bachelor in script writing, a master's degree in art research, and is now the student of a master's degree of history of science with a minor in medicine and pharmacology. She blends research with storytelling to bring Iran's culture to life through comics. When she is not writing, she's probably daydreaming about entering yet another degree. I'm Mahour, I'm the artist. I'm a comic artist from Tehran, and I mix ancient Iranian art with modern comics to tell stories that resonate with people everywhere. I have a bachelor in Persian miniature paintings from Mahour University and a master's in illustration. And I studied comics at Sequential Artist Workshop, the one-year program and the graphic novel intensive program. And these days I spend my time drawing, teaching, and trying to stop her from chasing yet more degrees. So our story is called Graveborn. Graveborn is a supernatural urban fantasy story set in modern day Tehran. The main character, Payam, is a medical intern who can see jinns and must prevent one of his patients from dying because of them, while the rest of the hospital staff can't figure out why the patient's condition is deteriorating and declining. Pigeon has to find a way to ward off the jinn without drawing too much attention. The next slide, please. I don't know if we have gone. I think there's a delay. So one of the main inspirations for this story was Iranian magic and in general magic in Iran and Iran's history. Our history and culture are deeply intertwined with the concept of magic, so much that the root of the word magic comes from the Iranian magi, or mog as we say it. Magi or magus is the term for priests in Zoroastrianism and earlier Iranian religions before Zoroastrianism. And that was, as I said, one of the main inspirations for this story. Iranian occult sciences and talismans, which are found in various Persian grimoires. And Pigeon, our main character, tries to use these talismans to protect his patients and sometimes heal them. If you go to the next slide. The jinns, well, if you want to, when you go to Iranian magic and when you try to research, especially Islamic Iran, like the Islamic era of Iran, you can't avoid jinn. They're everywhere. And while Muslim characters are gaining more representations in recent works, Islamic concepts like jinns still are rarely being used as the foundation of storytelling. So in Islam, jinns can be harmless, they can be your friend, or they can be extremely terrifying and dangerous. They bear no resemblance also to the wish-granting genies that are popular in Western media. For designing the jinn characters in our story, I mainly drew inspiration from Iranian miniature paintings, which often portrays them with fiery eyes, which I found very interesting design-wise. And the reason for that is that Muslims believe that unlike humans who were created from clay, jinns were created from fire, hence the fiery eyes. So if we can. So in this story, the jinn character speaks in another language. And the language we use is attributed to the Prophet Solomon. Muslims believe that Solomon had this ability to communicate with all creatures, including jinns. And we have another team member, Adel, our letterer, who designed a complete custom font based on Solomon's alphabet. And we've placed a decoding key. If you placed it on the back cover as a decoding key. However, since the script is driven from Farsi, the English-speaking readers should first translate from Solomon's scripts to Farsi and then Farsi to English. So there's a little puzzle in the comic if anyone's interested. And the process in general, the last slide, if we, the process in general for us as a team of artist and writer, is that we usually start with the page layouts. Some people use a script, sometimes we use a script, but since we work together and we're in the same studio, we usually just start with the layouts. And we do that when the story is fully complete and we are sure about every stage, every arc, and we don't need to go back and edit anything. So at first, we make several thumbnails, and for each page, sometimes we make more than one thumbnail for each page until both of us feel that we have the story flow we want. Actually, the most challenging part of making a comic for us has always been this stage, and I think it's the most challenging part in the process of comic making, because you have to make sure that visual narrative is being done the best way you can. I don't know if that's right way to put it. So the next stage, I usually go straight to inking it because my thumbnails are usually very clean. So I go straight to inking it, which is a part I really enjoy. I really have fun when I'm inking my pages. And after that is the colors, the flat colors that we do first. And then I do the rendering, the shading, the lighting. Besides from the thumbnailing process, the rest of the process is very mechanical. So we just stick to a schedule. And the letterer designs the speech balloons at the end and the narration boxes. And the most fun part for us is once the production is complete, we always try to print a physical copy of the book or of the comic, of the zine, anything we make, regardless of whether it's being published digitally or traditionally, because we always like to just hold it in our hand, which is the copy here. We've already done one. And it's always nice to look at your work when it's finished. And that's all. I try to do this very fast so we can get to others first, Thank you so much again to LDC for giving us this opportunity. And that's it.
So yeah, I'm Teresa Robertson. I started doing illustration when I was about 26, and I'm maybe 40 years older than that now. So I've been doing it for quite a while. So that's yeah, the next slide is of these cats. So the one at the top, Corky, was our cat for 17 years. So this is an autobiographical comic starting with our own cat, which just went through all the life of my children. So he was always there, either on the sofa or you know, just sort of following through the kids' lives. But then when he died, and that's at the end of that first half of the book, we had a little break. But then the family, all those sons of ours and my stepchildren, realized, I mean, a step granddaughter said, "You're basically a cat hotel," because they'd have a problem, which would mean they'd need to leave their cat with us. So we had a succession of these characters you can see here who were dumped with us, and you know, can you have them both at the same time or not? I'm interested that quite a few others have focused on cats as well. It seems that illustrators have an affinity with cats, maybe. In terms of making comics, I have been doing this since about 2014, having illustrated for people like the British Council, or I regularly paint people's houses as well. But I heard about Ladies Do Comics through one of my sons who was at Brighton Art College, and he told me about it. And I thought, that's actually just really lovely to tell autobiographical stories. So it's a new departure. Well, new, it's not that new, is it? 2014. Should we look at the next slide? That might show. Okay, so yeah, this is the beginning of the life with Corky. He was adopted from a lady in Kensal Rise, and I thought we ought to have, with boys, basically you need firm rules, maybe girls as well, and we thought we'd do the same with the cat, like don't let him just roam the house or he'll be on the bed all the time. And the reason we'd got one was because we'd got mice, and there was another reason. Well, the boys all wanted one anyway. So that you're seeing the beginning of the story there. Oh yeah, and we could afford it. We realized we'd got the budget, but not realizing to put a cat flap in, the whole back of the house was glass. It cost us £300. So basically, you know, getting a cat is always going to bring its own problems as well. So let's see the next one. And I can tell you a little bit about style, because I haven't shown any process. Similar to quite a few, I do pencil first, and then I ink, and then I do use old-fashioned, you know, watercolor. This is something else I've worked on recently. But yeah, so that's all on real watercolor paper. It's just the way I happen to work, and then scanning in. I've got a scanner right here. That was about the replacing the back of the glass. We got the cat, as I said, to catch mice. He only ever caught one. He wasn't a particularly good mouser. Yeah, it's on Halloween, and the mouse ran across the room and literally into his mouth. So that was pretty terrifying for all of us. But anyway, if we go to the next slide as well. And so the second half of the book, it's quite a short book. The second half is the cat hotel, where we've got the funeral of Corky. We thought that was the last cat we'd ever have, but then the eldest son, they leave the cat with us. They had twins. They were moving house. It was all a bit much, and poor cat was completely traumatized by the twins chasing it, teaming up with each other. So I think maybe, I don't know if the next slide shows them leaving him with us. He was a biter, each one. Oh yeah, because I only put a few slides in. That's an overview. That's the back cover of it. So you'd have to either get them. Oh, I can show you. Don't know if we can share the screen. That's the front cover of the sort of hard copy, if you like. I mean, I will sell these at craft fairs and stuff, or if people want a hard copy, they can. It's just 8 pages. Oh, thank you. So yeah, but if you have to get it to read more about all their little quirks and what happened. And on the last page, my daughter-in-law's sister literally rang me recently to say, oh, I'm coming over in September and I've got a what's it called, a cat who's when you need someone for comfort, a comfort cat. There's a special word, somebody used it earlier. So she'll be a therapy cat. Bringing that, we've got the next one lined up. Anyway, that's me.
Yeah, I don't really remember what I put in my slides. Okay. So yeah, the comic that I've made for LDComics is called A Woman's Artwork Is Never Done. Imagined, what I guess it should be, a woman's artwork is never done. I seem to quite like putting brackets in my titles of things. The graphic novel that I published a few years ago is called Biscuits, brackets Assorted. Similar to Chie, I got some DYCP funding in 2022. And what I told the Arts Council I was going to do was spend some time experimenting with collage comics, and also research art history and feminism and female art history, which it turns out is like an infinite topic. Unsurprisingly, I mean, it sounds like it should be infinite, but I learned a lot. I did a lot of study. I did a lot of really fun experiments in that year that I had the money. And one of the things that I did that came out of that was this comic in the middle of the Hands That Make, which is a little concertina zine that I've been selling ever since. It does quite well. And then more recently, I have been trying to develop it into something longer form. I did these stickers based on some of my favorite female artists for I've forgotten what it was now. The Inky Fair that was on South Bank, that was organised. So Lauren was amazing last year. And then now I've got 22 of these. So I originally did 10. So there's 22 people in the book. So the new comic features 22 of my favourite female creatives. From some of them are still alive, some of them are from a very long time ago, such as Artemisia Gentileschi, and my imagined conversations with them. So can I have another slide, please? Yeah, so cookie cutters seem to have become a thing that is a motif that I use in all my work. It wasn't something that I kind of decided to do. It just it's a bit of an addiction. So the characters in Biscuits, which is my graphic novel, came out of cookie cutters, and then in this comic I've used the cookie cutter as a motif for myself. I am asleep throughout the whole comic, but I do interact with the other characters in it as well. Another slide, please. And yeah, so these are the first couple of pages. So after I fall asleep, My body feels heavy, but my mind is skittish. I imagine I'm become old bones in the desert. Georgia O'Keeffe is here. She picks up my skull, looks through it to the sky. She says, slow down, look, everyone is here. So I did the first 10 pages of this comic in 2022 when I was still DYCPing. And then I kind of picked it up again a few weeks ago, and it's now about 42 pages, including the bump for the beginning and the end. And it was quite interesting to take something that I kind of was half conceived and rework it a little bit. It did kind of all change right up until the last minute. I was re-scripting and kind of shuffling stuff around literally a couple of days ago, which I think is just the way that I have to work. I think of all art as kind of collage, and you kind of have to let it exist and move things around until you're happy with it. And the pacing was annoying me right until the end. Then I had an idea for how to fix the pacing. So I think it works really well now. It was a lot of fun to do. And my process for this was a mix of digital collage and just ink drawing. I am very rich now at this time in my life with a bunch of stuff I've just been collecting for years and years and years. I have my day job is I'm an art teacher, so I collect things from the bin at school. I've done a lot of printmaking workshops. Anytime I get a present, I'm thinking, does this wrapping paper need to be scrumpled up and photocopied and like dipped in paint and then scanned? So I'm like, I have all of these digital resources, which is a really great place to be in. So although I do a lot of physical collage, I love doing now just collage on Photoshop, just layering things, using different adjustment layers. And I started using this motif of a frame, like a kind of classical art frame in this work as well. So it's interspersed between the story of the dream sequence with these little reflective frame pieces, which were a lot of fun to make. So that's really good. I think it is just a little bit stream of consciousness-y. It's exploring what I think it means to be a great artist, which there are a lot of great artists on this chat. I think it's not about comic artists. I didn't include any comic artists because I know so many. I thought if I included one, I would offend all of my other friends. So it's mostly what we call fine artists, with a few other people in there that just seemed like they wanted to join in. And I'm really interested in this idea of what does it mean to be a great artist, because not so very long ago, people were saying that women couldn't be great artists, and that's obviously nonsense because there are thousands and thousands of great women artists. But what does it mean to be great, and what does it mean to be an artist, and what does it mean to be a woman, are all ridiculous, huge questions that you can't answer in a short comic, but you can think about them in different ways. I also just love these women so much. I've drawn literally thousands of portraits in my life. I do a lot of portrait drawing, and there was just every single one. I didn't choose them because of this, but when I was doing the visual research, I was just like, oh, love her. I think it's something in the eyes of someone that's confident but curious and makes a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying that confident in the sort of fearless way, because all of these women overcame obstacles and had to be really brave and really resourceful. There's a great quote from Georgia O'Keeffe, which is, I've been absolutely terrified every day of my life, and I've never let that stop me doing anything that I wanted to do. And I think that's kind of the spirit of the book. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my name is Rulito, and Rulito is like or Rulo are common nicknames for the name Raul, which is my actual name. And I'm a cartoonist originally from Mexico, but I'm currently living in Canada. And yeah, a little bit about me is I used to draw and cartoon a lot when I was a kid. And then life happened and I just kept my drawing as a hobby. So I just basically did 1 or 2 paintings per year for many years. mainly in watercolors and acrylics. But then the pandemic happened, and ever since the pandemic, I started cartooning a little bit more seriously again. It was mainly because I started suffering from burnout from work, and drawing became a good way to process my feelings. And yeah, this is my submission to the LDC fair, and it is titled Office Bunny the Claw. So the Office Bunny is my main comic book, and so far I've been able to write and draw a handful of them. And the Claw is the latest one in the series. So Office Bunny tells the story of a bunny rabbit called Roberto, and he may be loosely based on me. He works at a soul-sucking corporate job and dreams of being free. So my comics have been recently called Some Dirty Socialist Comics. And I think that's the greatest compliment I've gotten so far from them. So the Claw in particular talks about the manosphere movement, and is directed at other men to try to nudge us away from toxic masculinity and the whole alpha male mentality. So one thing I think is that with the current state of the world, we really need to be more soft and compassionate instead of hard and competitive. Do you want to go to the next slide? Thank you. So I never got a formal art education, apart from one single comics course I took just before the pandemic in late 2019 at the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto. And this course was taught by this amazing woman called Fiona Smith. And she's a great artist, and she's an even greater person. So I really wanted to give her a shout out and also share her Instagram account. So, and it was at that class that I drew my first Office Bunny, which at the time was a one-page scene, the ones that you fold in 8 pieces and you cut down the middle. And yeah, and from that scene, the whole concept grew. And yeah, the next slide has some pictures of my process. So I normally have an idea of what I want each comic to be in my head, and generally it's just a list of 2 or 3 topics that I want to touch on. And in the case of the Claw, the main one was toxic masculinity, but also this thing called Bullshit Jobs, which is a book about how very often jobs that are not real get rewarded really well, and jobs that are real and necessary for the world don't get rewarded or don't get compensated. And then the third topic for this one was bad science. So then I make these tiny thumbnails and scribbles with rough dialogues. And I use that single page of like more or less the layout to guide myself. And then after that layout, I proceed directly to the pencil and the inking. Which is right there. There's a picture of like two panels. I work on like a notebook with like a spiral, and the size of the notebook allows me to draw like 1, 2, maybe even 3 panels per page of the notebook. And those panels are like a little bit bigger than the actual comic is intended to be. My actual comics are, the size is 5.5 inches times 8.5 inches. And so then when I scan them, I need to like cut them and rearrange them into the actual pages. And I work this way because I have a full-time job and I commute to work. So I need to be able to draw in the train or in the bus and here and there. So being able to draw on the notebook is a good way of using the time. After I scan them, I color them in Clip Studio Paint. And yeah, and if we can go to the next slide, you can see how they end up looking. Yeah, and these are some panels of the Claw. And yeah, it also shows some things that I worked on and tried to improve on while making this comic. And the first one is I tried to make panels to look a little bit more interesting, because I tended to do a lot of like talking heads where there's just like a head of a person and a lot of text. So so here I started to really try to like make it like nicer looking. And then the second one was I finally figure out, I mean, I say finally, but maybe with the next one, I'll think something else. I figured out a very limited palette color that I liked and used it. And one thing I try to do with this one, but I know that I need to get way better at, is to try to edit down the text to not so much text, because I tend to write too much, and then it makes it very difficult to like create a nice flow to the story. And then towards the end of the comic, if you see that the 2 panels have different line widths, and then the 3 panels don't. So towards the end of the comic, I started playing with like different line widths with my inking. And I have yet to get good at it, but I can see, but I'm happy so far with those. Like it really helps pop, the drawings pop up. And one thing that I know that I really want to fix for the next one is that I use Comic Sans to letter, which I know that is very frowned upon. So I'm going to experiment with different fonts for the next one. So yeah, and that's it. I'm very happy to be part of the fair. And thank you so much, everyone.
Hi everyone, thanks for letting me squeeze in on the end. This is actually a picture of me by Rachel Ball, so it's not by me, but I love it. I think my comic, actually, I'm just going to read you a really short little bit of it, because I think it explains itself better than I can tell you about it. So yeah, it's called The Foundling Hospital. Next slide, please, Lana. Actually, I might have to read this on my own screen because it's a bit small. So I'm just going to have it up beside this. Oh, okay. You made it bigger, Lana. Okay.
I made it bigger.
Yeah. My mother relinquished me to adoption when I was a baby and she was just 18. 31 years later, I found her and we met up for the first time since I was 6 days old. But we had to be careful because I was a secret. Don't worry, if we bump into someone, you could just introduce me as your friend. Thanks, love. I just need a bit more time to figure this out. I do want to tell my family about you. I just don't quite know how I'm going to do it. That's okay, I can give you time. You know, when I was pregnant with you, I went to the Foundling Museum. Oh, I've never been there. It was very sad. Next slide, please. The Foundling Hospital was founded in 17-something by a philanthropic sea captain called Thomas Coram. It was a children's home in London established for the education and maintenance of exposed and deserted young children. It has now become a museum. During the honeymoon period of our reunion, my first mother, Mary, shared some memories about our time together when she carried me inside her womb. Many of them were sad. After a few months, however, she told me she didn't want to discuss painful things anymore. Talking about the past became taboo. 10 years had passed since our first meeting. I couldn't have imagined suggesting we meet up here together. It would have stirred up too many unhappy feelings and provoked difficult conversations that she would not have been willing to have. However, since I was in the area, I had decided to pop in and visit the museum by myself. Next slide, please. My first stop was the infamous tokens. Between the 1740s and 1760s, mothers leaving their babies at the Foundling Hospital would also leave behind a small object as a means of identification. The children's true names were hidden on admission, so the idea was that if a woman ever returned to reclaim her child, she would be able to describe the token she had left. This could then be found in the secret records. Did Mary reclaim me? Not exactly. I could say that I tried to reclaim her, and initially it had seemed that she had welcomed me into her heart. She said I'd always been in it, anyway. I'll stop there. So that the comic is 16 pages, and it's basically a kind of musing on how things unfolded when I met my birth mother, but within the context of being at the Foundling Museum. And years later, after I visited the Foundling Museum, like just a couple of years ago, in fact, as this visit was some time ago, a couple of years ago, I discovered that my adoption file is actually held by the Couram Foundation, which are the sort of current social services wing of the Foundling Hospital. So in many ways, the Foundling Hospital and Thomas Couram are the grandfathers of current adoption, and the secrecy of a closed adoption, which is the kind of adoption I had, where you're not allowed to know who your parents are, and they're not allowed to know where you are or what your name is or whether you're dead or alive. That all has its roots really in the practices of adoption, it has its roots in the practices of how exposed and deserted children, or children whose parents couldn't or didn't want to keep them, how that was handled back in the days of Thomas Couram. Yeah, so that's my story. I only really make comics about my adoption. It seems to be how I process that sort of, that kind of major thing, which feels like it's really big. It's like, it's not just sort of like something I kind of worked through. I feel like I'll be working through it my whole life, and comics is a way for me to do that. So yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone. That's me.